Hi, Tanya. I'm sorry for not getting back to you earlier. I've been really ill this week with an eye infection, and I just actually couldn't even see up until Tuesday night, and so things have gotten behind with the midterm running and me trying to get caught up. So I apologize for not getting back to you sooner. Thanks for your perseverance, though. All right, so I had a look at the chart that you sent me, and there's a few little corrections. First of all, I don't. On the first row, when there's a 0 in your frequency, and that's your first interval, then don't include it, okay? So when you're looking at your values, what you want to do is find the lowest value and start there for your interval, all right? The other thing that you want to do is keep your interval, your bin size, sort of, around 5 to 7 sort of intervals. And so if you go by groups of 10 for this data, then because we're looking at exam scores that we know can go to 0 to 100, it makes sense to break it up into what we call deciles, which is groups of 10%. And so in this case, when you're doing your chart, let me make this smaller here, just a wee bit, so I have some room to write, okay? When you're doing your frequency table, and I apologize because I'm at my other job right now and I don't have my stylus with me, but when you're doing your intervals, it looks like your lowest mark is 25 in this chart, and so I would go 20 to just under 30, so let's call it 20 to 29 since they're whole values, and then 30 to 39 and so on, okay, in your chart. And so that's how I would make up my bins, all right? And then normally with a frequency chart, we just go through and we put a little tick whenever we see a value that fits into that interval. The next column is usually adding those up. So in this case, we would have one value in between 20 and 29. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do what we call the cumulative frequency. If I can get my mind or my mouth around that. And the cumulative frequency is just adding them off as you go. So if we look in the chart and we're looking at values between 30 and 39, I don't see any. And so the frequency would be, the tally would be 0 here. And so the frequency would be 0. The cumulative frequency is 1 so far. And after the second interval, it's still 1. And that's how we go with it, okay? So the next row would be 40 to 49, and if I go through and I put a tick every time I see a mark between 40 and 49, I've got 48. I don't have any more, do I? I think that's it. So there's just 1 in that interval again. Okay, so there's 1 for the total, which brings our cumulative frequency to 2, and so far, and so on. So you're going to keep doing that all the way down until you get to your 90 to 100. And then if you count up the number of scores, we've got 20 students. So we know that by the time we get down to the bottom that we should have 20 total in our cumulative frequency. So by the time we get to the final interval, we should be at 20, okay? So the only other thing that you would add to a chart like this would be the cumulative frequency percent. And that's just figuring out the percent as you're going down the chart in terms of how many out of the total. You really can't do that until you've got this value here, until you know the total, okay? I'm just going to try to move some stuff over just a little bit here. There we go. If we do the cumulative frequency percent, then all we're doing is taking our total in the cumulative frequency column and making it into a percent. And so the first column, 1 out of 20, is the fraction that we have there. That's 5%, okay? We still are at 5% in the second case because we added 0 to our tally. In the next row for 40 to 49, now we have a cumulative frequency of 2 so far. So 2 out of 20 is 1 out of 10. So now we're at 10% of the data that we have accounted for. And as we go through, obviously, we're going to keep going up until this column should say 100% when we're done. Okay, that's all there is to making an interval chart. I think the one on the exam asks you for 7 values, so you're going to be looking for 7 bins. And so you want to divide up your data into an appropriately sized interval so that you can have 7 bins, and just do the same thing we did here for this table. So I hope that helps, and again, I apologize for taking so long to get back to you. It's just been a crazy week. I was up till midnight last night just marking tests from last week that I hadn't been able to see up until that point, and so it's just been a little bit behind. Okay, feel free to email me back if you have further questions. I will check again tonight before you write your exam.